My name is John Ruglieri. I live at 34 Bones Lane, obviously in Raritan, New Jersey. I own, with my son Michael and my wife, 8 3rd Street in Raritan. 8 3rd Street, if you remember, is now part of that Block 81, which you guys condemned. You actually condemned our house. There was no public meeting at all. My concern is that, we bought the house about 10, 11 years ago. We spent quite a bit of money trying to update it. Most of the money was spent out of our own pocket. Our intention was never to sell the property. My son moved in there. He was there for 4 or 5 years before he got married. The property is rented. It was my intention when I retire that I should retire in a single-family home, or two-family home. It's a small apartment. They're 800, 900 square feet. That dream has just gone up in smoke. My intent was, obviously, to move in there eventually. Church is right across the street. Usually go there. Downtown is not a problem. Get on a train, I could have access to wherever we want to go. I got pushed into this 8% of the entire square footage of that property as one of the 3 properties that were condemned. I'm not very happy about that, specifically because we've spent some time and effort trying to beautify the area. The houses were not boarded up. It's not a blighted area, in my opinion. Why he went ahead and did that is, I can understand that there would have been some money that was exchanged as far as potentially when the development goes through. But one of my questions is, it was explained to me that there was something like $720,000 that the developer was going to put back into the township coffers that was not going to be sent to the Board of Education and the county. Is that every year or over a longer period of time?
Well, there's a couple of things, if I can. Is first off, the property was not condemned. There is a process called according to a statute called the redevelopment of the area, and the purpose of the statute is to take areas that need improvement that are defined from a statutory point of view. What occurred at the last meeting was that the council voted to have that property, Block 81, looked at by the planning board, and in particular the planning board's redevelopment planner, who they're going to pick, I suspect, or at least review qualifications, at the next planning board meeting, which is tomorrow night. The issue with respect to condemnation or eminent domain isn't that the council indicated that they were going to go out and condemn, but rather that in the event that the private marketplace was not able to come to a reasonable accommodation, the opportunity existed for the borough to step in and to essentially offer fair value for the property at that point in time. That's much further down the road, but it is an option that was voted on at the last meeting. So the process goes from, that was how we were proceeding, it goes to the planning board, their special planner reviews the property as to whether or not it fits the statute, then they come back to the council, and then the council accepts or rejects, I suspect is the answer, their findings as to whether or not that property fits within the statutory definition for redevelopment. And that's really where we're at.
Well, when the attorney that we had hired to represent the township, who obviously being paid by the developer, and I find that a little bit unusual, but a lot of things happen in life. There were 2 things that he brought up. You could either determine the property was condemned,
with or without condemnation.
With or without condemnation.
Correct.
And the board opted
Chose the
to go
latter.
with with the condemnation.
Right, the left.
View. Okay. Which to me, and I'm not this is kind of new for me, at least in the last week, where I've done some investigating. When somebody condemns something, it's condemned. It's nothing other than condemned. I don't know how you could turn it anything other than condemned.
I think it's simple. It is that the issue is a balance of public and private interest. Okay? If after going through the process, it is viewed as the public interest that that project should go ahead, and negotiations between the private parties, which would be in this case, which would be your family and the developer fail, then the council has the opportunity to essentially look at a balancing of the public and private interests. And if it views that the project should go ahead, then at that point in time, it would institute eminent domain or condemnation on the parcels that were not able to come to a private marketplace agreement. So in essence, the thing that we received from the proponent, applicant, I guess we call it, was that they had 93% of the property under contract. And so that way, at least heavily, that it brought into question public versus private interest, because in essence, should that 7% hold up a project that may be beneficial to the town? And the reason I say may, because we haven't gone through this process that is delineated in the statute. And in essence, the way I understand it is that the council will make a decision after going through the entire process as to whether or not, and let's assume the 7% remains, whether or not it is in the public interest to essentially exercise condemnation on those 7% of the acreage. And therefore, the project goes ahead. Or in the alternate, it chooses not to, and then the project is terminated. Does that understand?
Yep. So it's my understanding that there was no redevelopment study done, is that correct?
No, he came in saying
Just made a
that,
presentation.
right, and so as a result of that, that gets passed over to the planning board, and that starts tomorrow.
So the planning board is going to be on board as far as being able to put together that study, then it's going to be
The
rationalized.
planning board is going to hire a redevelopment specialist that looks at the property and then determines whether or not the property meets the requirements under the statute.
Okay. Block 81, was that ever considered a blighted area?
That is, there's one more question, because 5 minutes is up, John, but no one has made a determination as to whether or not it is. There were certain assertions based upon economics by the proponent, or the developer, but the reality is the purpose of this specialist planner, redevelopment planner, is to specifically look at that question. So the answer to your question is no one has looked at it, and the purpose of this initial stage is for the planner to specifically look at that.
Okay, so there are two things that the planning board has to perform yet. One is to determine whether or not it's a blighted area, and number two, to determine whether or not it's a redevelopment area.
I'm not an expert in this, but I tend to believe, and I'm sorry, we're out of time, but I tend to believe that's exactly the same question. I think within the statute, within the same statute, there is a redevelopment definition as well as a blighted definition. And in essence, the charge from the council was to look at it as a redevelopment area in accordance with the redevelopment statute.
Okay, so
Not a discussion of blighted, that wasn't in any of this conversation. Okay?
So this is not going to happen tomorrow?
No.
Tomorrow night's meeting?
No.
Just to give you some idea of how long this is going to take.
That I do have to end it, but I think we'll have a better understanding, because the way that it works is, I can make it simple, is that we've acted, we've sent it over to the planning board. The planning board is going to pick an expert on redevelopment. That person or company is going to look at the area with Block 81 with respect to the statute, he or she is going, or they are going to prepare a report for the planning board. The planning board's gonna make a determination after review of that, and a recommendation back to the council, and then the council is gonna look at it at that point in time. And that's just whether or not the area fits the redevelopment statute. Okay, thank you, I'm sorry, time's up.
Mayor, if I may, just very briefly.
Sure.
And sir, you're gonna get notice of all the hearings, or all the hearings are public before the planning board, obviously, so they'll be conducted with proper notice, and your property as being within the proposed redevelopment study area, you'll get notice as well of when the hearings will be held. You'll have an opportunity to be heard, as if you were here tonight, and voice whatever concerns you might have.
Thanks.
Just a quick one, Chuck. You never answered the $720,000. How is that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
How is that flushed into the coffers of this township?
As I read it.
Is it one number?
No, as I read it, and correct me, maybe you guys could, as I read it, it was a per annum.
$720,000.
Yeah,
For how long?
30 years.
Right.
Is that right?
That's right, and it's all, that would be pursuant to a financial agreement that's entered into between the council and the developer, which has just been negotiated, because we're not even at that point.
But, you know, everybody
It's a
presents,
substantial amount of money. Anybody tells me.
it's true, Jack.
That's a lot of money.
So, okay, I'm sorry, but that's it. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.